Speaking of bans, everything should be banned now, apparently. There's this mob called the Western Sydney Leadership Dialogue. They want to ban junk food advertising on public transport because if you see a Snickers ad on your way home from school, you're going to turn into a fatty, apparently. Now, the Western Sydney, apparently, more than half of people in Western Sydney are overweight, and the region is recognised as a diabetes hotspot. It's got twice the rate of diabetes as the rest of Sydney does. So this Western Sydney Leadership Dialogue says, well, we've got the solution. If you just stop advertising the Snickers bars and the chips, no one will be fat anymore. I'm sorry, Western Sydney Leadership Dialogue. It doesn't work like that. We haven't advertised cigarettes for, 30, 40 years and people still smoke. I don't think it's going to do all that much. What happened to personal responsibility? I mean, surely you can make your own mind up about what you're going to put in your mouth. You know chips aren't healthy. You know chocolate isn't healthy. But you know what? Sometimes you're going to do it anyway. And if you're a parent, and this is the thing, the argument's always, well, we should ban the junk food ads during the kids' TV shows. I'm sorry, the kids don't make the decisions about the grocery shopping.
They don't have the money.
You're the parent. Like, surely if your kid comes to you and says, Mum, can I have some chips? And you say, OK, you can have chips once a week. And he says, but I want them every night. You say, well, you have them once a week. You teach the kid a lesson. You don't need to ban ads.
Caleb, parents are so tired. You just give your kids whatever you want just to shut them up. I'm joking. The problem here is human nature, right? That's what they're not factoring in. They think, oh, if we just stop the ads, then suddenly everything will be all right. But the problem is that human nature wants what humans want. And junk food's one of the few consolations of having to live through Armageddon, Liz. I mean, the news is so depressing. I want a Snickers bar as soon as the show is done.
But as if getting rid of advertising, people are going to forget how yummy a Snickers bar is, how good a Big Mac is. Like, do me a favour. Also, I want to know how they came up with the stat. So did you just sit around in Western Sydney and be like, yeah, about 50%? Say about 50%. Yeah. Like, seriously, how do you come up? It sounds like a compelling stat and like, oh yes, we must do something about it, and therefore here's our agenda. But how did you come up with that? And I'm sorry, whenever any of these bodies talk about, oh, what we must do to make us healthier, I'm like, well, ban GMO food. That's one really good thing Russia has done. Get rid of the microplastics that we've all got running through our systems now because it's in absolutely everything we put in our mouths. There's toxic crap in our air, in our water. No one talks about any of that. I'd rather keep the junk food and let people be unhealthy if they want to, but it's the unhealthiness that's beset upon us unconsciously most of the time. Let's talk about fluoride in our water, etc., and so on. No, nobody wants to talk about that. Let's just take your junk food off you. Do me a favour. These people could actually put themselves to some good use.
Something's going to kill you one day, right? If you want to have your Snickers bar, have your Snickers bar. Or if you want to have a glass of wine, have a glass of wine. And they're coming for that too. They said recently, Jed Kearney, one of the federal ministers, they're looking into the possibility of putting, cancer warnings on bottles of wine.
Oh,
and now they want to put individual messages on cigarettes. I mean, come on.
If the government want to get involved, they should just do education campaigns that educate people to make better choices rather than try to remove choices from people.
As the proverb says, why live like an invalid to die a healthy man?
Well, the government doesn't need to convince young people in Australia not to drink. They're giving up the booze all by themselves, according to a report from the Australian Institute of Health, which says that nationally there's been a 133% spike in 18 to 24-year-olds abstaining from alcohol. That's just in the last 20 years. Or, to put it another way, 21% of Australians in that age group now don't drink. Now, the Adelaide Advertiser interviewed one young person who said that since giving up drinking, he'd saved $14,000 a year. So that was his motivation. Other young people said they were scared of being filmed or photographed in a drunken state and then having that put on the internet. But then there was this quote, which I thought was interesting, from Professor Jacqueline Bowden. She said they are also spending more time on social media rather than probably getting together and drinking like they used to, Caleb. So 18 to 24-year-olds aren't drinking because they're at home on the internet updating their social media.
I find that quite sad because it's basically saying that they're not drinking as much because they're losing social connection. Now, you know, we know there are dangers associated with drinking to excess, but there's nothing wrong with going down to the pub with your mates and having a good time. And basically what she's admitting there is that they're not going to the pub and having a good time with their mates anymore. They're sitting at home on social media, on Facebook, on whatever it might be, messaging each other instead. I think that's awful. I mean, you know, I'm sure the doctors would say, whoopee, this is great, fewer people are drinking. But I reckon what you lose from not having that social connection is far more unhealthy than the 5 beers you might have had at the pub.
Well, that's why they're all getting obese, because they're sitting at home, isolated.
They're not walking to the pub anymore.
And there's nothing to say they aren't at home having a sneaky few by themselves and nobody knows about it. But no, I think it is extremely sad. I mean, the stats on loneliness nowadays, in any age demographic, they say that, you know, males have it worse than females. But I think across the board, we're looking at a society that deems itself more connected than ever thanks to social media. Yeah. But the shallowness of those relationships, if you can call them that, is absolutely appalling. So the fact that that's what they're replacing socialising with,